Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome to the third episode of Washer Dryer, as we take on Treasure-Trove Cove in the form of the washing machine that is the result of the wishy-washy Banjo cheat code. So far, the challenge is going somewhat well, although there's not really a great deal of room for failure. You see, at this point, we've only not been able to get one Jiggy, which was not due to a lack of skill, but because of a limitation imposed on you as a washer-dryer machine. And while maybe by most people's standards, missing only one is not a great problem, the issue is that you actually need a minimum of 94 Jiggies in order to pass the game, and so having now already missed one after only one level means that we're already one step closer to not actually being able to pass this challenge. We are already, as of the third episode and second level, already at a point that we can now only miss a maximum of 5 Jiggies before it becomes a catastrophic issue. And considering, as you've just seen right now in the sped up footage, due to the hit detection and controls being slightly weird as the washer dryer, this might become a bit more of a problem later on when we get to the actual difficult platforming. It's already rather difficult to judge attacks, not just because the hit detection sometimes doesn't actually work and you move directly through an enemy that you should have hit or through an item you should have picked up, but also because you're actually larger than the hitbox, and so what looks like should be a perfectly timed attack, and if you were Banjo would in fact be one, instead ends up with you taking a hit. This has, so far, as I said, not been too much of a major issue because the levels are quite easy. We have missed one Jiggy, but as I stated earlier, this wasn't due to skill, but instead because literally it wouldn't trigger the event that would allow you to actually get the Jiggy. But I do admit to being at least slightly concerned about the prospects of the more difficult platforming coming up, especially the ones found within Rusty Bucket Bay and Click Clock Woods. But we'll jump that horse when we come to it, as after all, as Qui-Gon Jinn would be quick to remind us, we should not center on our anxieties, but instead keep our concentration here and now where it belongs. Because after all, while we should be mindful of the future, it should not be at the expense of the present. We must after all be mindful of the living force. Well, not quite all of that applies to Banjo-Kazooie, but it's probably good advice nonetheless. And so speaking of the present, Treasure-Trove Cove. It's not the first time we've been here in this challenge, in fact it's actually the third, because this is where the sandcastle is required for you to make the transformation. However, that said, it is the first time we've been here in this challenge that we're actually here to collect all of the collectibles. And when exploring a Treasure-Trove Cove, we're better to start collecting collectibles than the location of the actual treasure that likely gives the cove its namesake, the salty hippo and its heroic captain, Captain Blubber. Now, in all honesty, I 100% did not actually expect to be able to get this Jiggy. You see, in order to get the Jiggy, you have to collect the gold under the water, and then walk up to Captain Blubber, throw the gold at him, and he awards you with a Jiggy. The only problem here being is that in order to throw him the gold, you have to hold it above your head, which utilizes the same animation that we didn't actually have in Mumbo's Mountain, preventing us from giving you Chimpy the orange and receiving the subsequent Jiggy, since it's pretty much the exact same setup in this level except with gold instead of an orange, and with Captain Blubber instead of Chimpy, I fully assumed that it would not actually work. However, I figured when in Rome, and also since there's so little room for failure, I might as well give it a crack regardless. However, I was unfortunately 100% correct in my assumption, and it turned out to be a disappointing waste of time. And then to add further insult to injury, it was also impossible to get the Ekin Bokum token at the top of the Salty Hippo's mast, which I found to be rather shocking because I never imagined a washing machine wouldn't be able to climb up a mast of a ship and grab a metallic skull. It just seemed like something that it should be able to do. This, however, is nowhere near as big an issue as the Jiggies are, because there's always a surplus of Ekin Bokum tokens towards the end of the game. It's just mildly annoying for someone like me who enjoys 100%ing things, but since that was something that was never going to be the case in this washer-dryer challenge, I'm going to just have to let it slide. And so, moving rather swiftly on, I went back and collected a couple more music notes because, after all, they come rather in handy when it comes to unlocking doors, and hopefully I'll be able to get enough to give me some power-ups for the boss battle. And if not, at least I'll be able to say I climbed a palm tree, which in truth is more than most washing machines can claim. And continuing on with my pursuit of thirst for washing machines, I decided it was about time for this here washer-dryer to learn how to fly. And so it was straight back onto the Salty Hippo to climb up to the observation post in order to find Bottle's mole hole. I always throughout the Banjo-Kazooie series really appreciated the comedic placing of Bottle's tunnels, and I think this one here, on the top of a wooden plank way up in the air, is possibly one of the best. And so now with the power of flight soundly within my grasp, it was time to take to the air, briefly fly around, and then almost immediately land. Because after all, we want the treasure in this here angry treasure chest. And once that treasure has gone and gotten, it's about time to head once more again back to the Salty Hippo, back up to the observation desk, back onto the flight pad, and back in once more to the Great Blue. As in the sky, not the ocean. I think they're both called the Great Blue. And once airborne, we're better to go than the other cave on the opposite side of the Hungry Treasure Chest, which has a pathway leading upwards towards more music notes, another Jinjo, and a Jiggy on top of a lighthouse. Which is a question that on the surface might sound rhetorical, but I think long-term Banjo-Kazooie fans who have probably played this game a lot probably have an answer to it, and indeed I will provide an answer to it myself because it is not actually rhetorical. But until we get to that, I continue to climb the spiral pathway leading up to the lighthouse, ground pound the Gruntilda switch, giving us access to the all-important overworld Jiggy, and then enter the lighthouse itself. Which is where, unfortunately, we have the answer to the rhetorical, not rhetorical question, where better to go next than the cave opposite to the cave with the angry treasure chest. Because, as to get the Jiggy you require the jump pad, and I haven't actually learned the jump pad ability yet, where better to go is to Bottles to actually learn the darn ability. And so, abandoning any semblance of linear approach to this level, I start scaling my way back down the hill and, why not, get some Jiggies on the way. And so once gotten, I decided to make a zigzag journey on the way back to Bottles in order to learn the jump pad ability, and while zigzagging made sure to pick up a Jinjo and a couple more music notes. And now that I do in fact finally have the ability, I double backed a little bit to collect a couple of music notes I could see, because at this point my usual approach to this level, which is quite linear and goes around the island and ends in me having everything that I need, has pretty much entirely gone out the window, and I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to actually miss music notes since I'm not doing things in the right order anymore, so if I see it, I'm going to grab it so I don't get to the end of the level and wonder which ones I've missed. And with that little detour out of the way, it was time to do the jumping challenge part of this level, which, much like a lot of the footage throughout this video, I've sped up a little bit because there's not really much difference between doing it in this washer-dryer challenge than there is to doing it in a regular Banjo-Kazooie playthrough. It's not really that difficult platforming, and so if you've done it in Banjo-Kazooie, you're going to be able to do it in washer-dryer. And once I had gone done doing it, I not only had the Jiggy from doing the jumping challenge, but also the Jiggy from finding all of the Jinjos on this level. And so, kicking the speed into overdrive again, it's time to once more head up another spiral path, which until making this series, I never realized there were quite so many of them in Banjo-Kazooie, and find our way to yet another flight pad, and in doing so, the next challenge. And so, while I do fly around doing this challenge, which is once again not any more difficult than doing it in the regular Banjo-Kazooie playthrough, I just want to make a quick comment about something that I've not yet bothered to mention so far while doing this playthrough. Namely, I really truly love how very funny it looks to do absolutely anything in this here challenge. The game always had a wonderfully cartoon look to it, and moving around the level as a bear with a bird in his backpack was already funny enough, but the comedic value is kicked up to an entire new level when it's replaced with an inanimate object, especially one as unlikely to go on an adventure as a washer-dryer machine. This is, I believe, no more noticeably hilarious than when the washing machine is flying, as it adds just yet another weird level of surrealism to it. I think if Salvador Dali was to play this game, he would probably get a wicked kick out of it. Aside from somehow looking even funnier than a bear flying around with a bird in his backpack, however, this part of the challenge is once again not that different from just doing it as regular Banjo-Kazooie. As far as I can tell, it handles pretty much exactly the same. I mean, granted, there's not exactly much precise flying in this part of the challenge, and I might be singing a different song later on when I have to fly through narrow hoops or take on a witch or whatever, but at the moment in this challenge there was no real difficulty. In fact, aside from having a slightly more obscured view because of how much bulkier the washer-dryer is than Banjo and Kazooie, I would say it's pretty much exactly the same. And so, you know the drill, X marks the spot, fly around and ground pound all of the X's, and then, once you're done, go and murder that nice friendly anthropomorphic treasure chest. Which, in doing so, awards us with the 6th Jiggy for Treasure-Trove Cove, which is a slightly bittersweet victory, having that we already know that regardless of how well we do at this point, we're still going to end the level at least one Jiggy down. And so, on my way to get some more collectibles, I stop on a floating crate and poop some eggs onto Snacker because, after all, what are friends for, before continuing on with my journey. The next Jiggy I come upon is once again a rather easy one to get. It's not protected by any sort of puzzle or challenge, and it's definitely not at the end of some difficult platforming, and really I assume the only difficulty in finding this Jiggy is that it's slightly well hidden, so maybe if this was the first time you were playing the game it might be difficult to get, but I don't remember because that was over a decade ago. What followed after getting the successful 7th Jiggy was, well, a lot of time wasting, and due to us all being rather constrained time-wise, thanks to the pressures mortality puts upon us, I'll fast forward to the good bits. The first of which being that I got this rather shiny honeycomb, which is the first of the two in this here Treasure-Trove Cove. The second, third, and fourth, I suppose, depending on how you want to define things, was Mary Poppying my way down the staircase and collecting some music notes, backflipping my way into an angry treasure chest in order to get some more Ikambokum tokens, before once again returning to the stairs to do a bit more sliding, because, let's be honest, deep down, everyone wants to be practically perfect in every way. In reflection, I do think Mary Poppins actually did a far better job at it, but then again, she also has legs and a buttocks, which a washing machine doesn't have, so it's presumably a lot easier for her to balance. But then again, on the other hand, she slid up the staircase, which is probably a lot more difficult than sliding down one. But I digress, it's time to speed up once again until the next point of interest. Which is, incidentally right now, in which it turns out that I didn't actually need the jump pad whatsoever. This is yet another thing I absolutely love about the original Banjo-Kazooie in many levels, but most notably in Treasure-Trove Cove, the way in which you can so seamlessly transition throughout parts of the level. I remember when I first played this game and found out that you can just fly up to the top of the level rather than actually going through the screen in which you get the fade out and the fade in, which I suppose at the time I assumed was a loading screen loading up the next part of the level. When I discovered you could just fly there, my mind was completely blown. As far as game design goes, it's probably one of the coolest levels you could have possibly built when showing off the new ability to fly, and complementing it the way the music transitions, which unfortunately I have turned down here so it doesn't get me a copyright claim, was a thing of utter beauty. And speaking of things of utter beauty, it's about time that I engage a giant crab in the throes of Mortal Kombat. I actually always felt a little bit sorry for Nipper. After all, it's his beach. We come here, we take all of his gold, he offers us help regardless, we insult him, before we viciously kill him and raid his home. That said, I am still obviously going to slaughter him. I just want everyone to know that I'm a little bit choked up about it. I think this boss battle better illustrates than anything so far that this challenge is a little bit more difficult than it looks like it is on the surface. After all, I've played through this game multiple times, and I viciously slaughtered the kind and accommodating Nipper, usually each time without taking any damage. However, being that I am a washing machine, and my size and jump and attack not exactly being what I'm used to, it became rather deceptively difficult. I became pretty uncertain of myself, and was at least a little bit worried that I wouldn't be able to defeat this boss, despite him being an adversary of such a low level of difficulty. And of course this would be a rather infuriating setback, as this level has already dragged on longer than it should have, and since I'm playing it on the original Nintendo 64, if I were to have died at this point, I would have to have gone back from the start and collect all of the music notes again. And so, having erred on the side of caution and gotten a bit of honey, which is, as you know, a washing machine's favourite snack, I returned to finish the job. And finish the job I did. Having landed the killer blow, Nipper retreated back into whatever dark void he finds within his shell, because he's certainly not simply in there once you enter, and I must say after the trouble he caused me, I didn't feel nearly as bad about killing him this time. And to really hammer home the humiliation, once inside his shell, I stole all of his music notes, ground pounded into the ground what I can only assume to be his children. Then again, they're not the same species of crab, so maybe they're just his much smaller roommates. And of course, rather importantly, stole his Jiggy, which once gotten brought the total number of Jiggies collected in Treasure-Trove Cove to 9, which is as many as the game will allow you while doing this cheat. However, today's collectathon is not quite over, as there are still some more music notes to get, so let's fast forward straight over to the sandcastle, which will now have been in 3 times throughout this challenge. I'm not really sure why the crab within the castle still tried to defend the castle. After all, his Jiggy's gone, and if he's heard news of Nipper, he would know that I've defeated much larger crabs than he. But whatever, with yet another cruel crustacean killing on my conscience, I was able to move on, collect the final music notes in this level, completing it to 100, and I was, aside from the Miss Jiggy, 100% done with Treasure-Trove Cove. Well, if only that were true. But in fact, I still had one more honeycomb to find, and I spent the next painful length of time trying to find the darn thing. Which is sort of weird because I'm fairly sure I know where it is. I mean, I found it in the All Honeycombs video I made last time I played through the game. Maybe I just got too used to Banjo-Kazooie on the Xbox 360's draw distance, or maybe something to do with this glitch interfered with it, but while playing through this level in this instance I couldn't find it, and so unless I really end up needing it later on, I probably won't bother with it, and if I do end up needing it, I can always come back. And so there you have it. Treasure-Trove Cove completed to at least a slightly acceptable degree in the washer-dryer challenge. Now, I'm going to go eat a bunch of ice cubes because I've been recording this with a sore throat, which is why I might sound a little bit weird. But before I do so, I best go grab the overworld Jiggy that we get from the Gruntilda switch, because we need Jiggies to pass the game. And with that now done, we've come to the end of the third episode of Washer Dryer Treasure-Trove Cove. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, I have been and still am Grindle.